Greetings, dear friends. Welcome to the meditation for the common good. Today, on the day of the Sagittarius New Moon, we meet in our circle to bring our group intention on the common good, expressing it through our reflective meditation. The topic that we've been holding in our group focus in this cycle of Sagittarius is directing will and vision, uplifting the whole. Starting with the full moon, we've been meditating, invoking the vision of the unfolding divine plan, and asking for direction from our elder brothers to inspire and direct our group mind to recognize the most resonant ideas that could uplift and lead humanity in this struggling time. So today we meet to offer the most resonant seeds into the group chalice, and through the power of our focused group intention to magnetize and radiate those into the stream of mental substance of human family. As always, we begin our work with sounding the purpose of our focused group effort. Over to you, Birgit.
Alexander. Our purpose is to magnetize the ideas of common good, freedom, and brotherhood as the highest values of humanity at this time. We recognize and cherish diversity of perspectives in our group, creating a space capable of invoking, receiving, interpreting, and radiating a higher synthetic vision. We serve as an asramic outpost, building a group bridge of Buddhic energy. We evoke the soul of humanity. We envision humanity as being the seed that is flowering. We prepare the way for the reappearance of the coming one. And over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Birgitta, and thank you everyone for being here today. As we begin our focus today in this new moon meditation, the naming circle unites our hearts across distance as we begin our alignment and bring ourselves fully into our group work. By uniting our hearts in this way, we begin naturally to work telepathically through our group mind. The key to this telepathic work is in the etheric alignment, which creates the group field and allows it to become both a receiving and transmitting agent for higher ideas and energies. We will begin by calling our names into the circle, starting with our organizers. And as your name is called, please unmute yourself, say your name and where you are calling in from. For example, Tracy Arbor calling in from Novi, Michigan, USA. And as we go through this, let us turn our attentions to our heart and the heart center of the group gathered today as each one of us calls ourselves into this circle. Alexander.
Hello again, friends. My name is Alexander Ilchuk, and I'm connecting today from Brooklyn, New York, in the United States.
Welcome. Birgitta.
Hello, I'm Birgitte Rasmussen, calling in from Slagelse in Denmark.
Welcome. Andrea.
Hello, everyone. This is Andrea Russ, and I am calling today from Weston, Massachusetts in the United States.
Welcome. Judy.
Hello, this is Judy Harrison calling in from Brewster, Massachusetts, USA.
Welcome. Martha.
Greetings, dear family. I'm Martha Gallahue, calling in from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada.
Welcome. Kiki.
Hello, I'm Kiki Bill calling in today from Washington, D.C., USA. Thank you.
Welcome. Maria Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Maria Victoria calling from Italy.
Welcome. Maureen. Maureen, can you please unmute yourself? She might be having some difficulty. Welcome, Maureen. Tia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tia Clark, and I'm calling in from Rockville, Maryland, USA.
Welcome. Thank you, everyone. Now that we are linked together as a group, let us share a few moments in silence to align, forming a triangle between Shambhala, the hierarchy, and humanity. May our efforts be of the highest vibration in selfless service for our purpose.
Thank you, friends. In this cycle of Sagittarius, Andrea, Judy, and Martha have been focalizing our meditation, holding the group focus and offering us questions for reflections. So now you can see on the screen the questions that we've been holding in our group focus since the full moon. So we're opening now the floor to share any further recognitions and impressions on the topic directing will and vision, uplifting the whole. When you would like to share, please just unmute yourself and make your offering.
So I can begin. When I look at the first question, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, as we held this idea and this question of what conditions create pathways, I have been looking out to the world. But in my more recent meditations, I realized that the pathway is actually the Antakarana. And instead of looking out, looking up really creates that pathway. Our alignment, our ability to work as a group whole in terms of the one planetary server is really creating the pathway for right human relations. And this past Sunday in our UN meditation group, each one of us takes a turn to do the alignment. And in the alignment, we were sitting in a forest with our backs against a tree. And that tree became the Antakarana. It went up through the spine. And if anybody has sat in the forest and looked up, all those trees seem to converge at a higher point. And it did that, and the energy came coursing through, and there was this crackling because we were sitting on pine needles. And the recognition was that each one of these pine needles was, in fact, humanity. And the energy just, it crackled and it crackled and it spread and it spread. And this may have been in my creative imagination, but it felt really much more solid than that. And I was hearing the note of what I would consider humanity. And it just went through and it moved and it moved and it made that soft crackling sound. It was a note that I don't think I ever really held before. And so the understanding of creating the pathway is that we, in fact, are that pathway for right human relations. And to take this meditation full circle, at the end, when we do our sharing, there was a new member that participated, and she expressed her thoughts on the meditation. And then she shared that she was from Russia, and her name was Svetlana. And after she did her sharing, she then spoke to all of us in Russian. And not that we understood what was said, but it was the sound went into all of our hearts. And as we were closing our meditation, one of our members said, "I want to welcome you, Svetlana. I live in Finland. I am your neighbor." And when he said, "I am your neighbor," there was this energetic that was a bridging, and it was a true bridge. It was an understanding of the fact that no matter who we look at, I am your neighbor. And Finland certainly is neighbors with Russia. And so in terms of countries, I am your neighbor. But right human relations is to look at every member within humanity and just to be able to say, I am your neighbor. And it created at the level of soul or at the level of meaning, that understanding that we're creating the bridge so that each soul can understand, I am your neighbor. And today is the International Migrant Day, which the UN holds, and tomorrow is the International Day of Human Solidarity. Human solidarity. I didn't even know that the United Nations had such a day, but the energy was very palpable and real. And I understood that the arrows that we sling are not just out into areas of problem or issue, but the arrow has to go up so that the energy can go through. and so that we can all say, I am your neighbor. Thank you.
I can build on that a little bit. Yesterday, I sat in a meditation with the Spiritual Caucus of the United Nations. And the focus of that meditation, after we sat in silence for half an hour, was shared. And it really became apparent that what we call spiritual has really come into that entity of the United Nations. When some within that group who were part of the initial impetus of that group began, one particular member said that the word spiritual was also at that point, which was about 25 years ago, and Martha will help me with this, when this group was created. She said, if you said the word spiritual, people looked at you like you were a little weird, like it really wasn't something when they started that they could fully announce and invite those to come into, and that in time, it is incredible to have watched that entity really take on becoming more spiritual. Just as Judy was indicating the different things that they're offering now, and there's now the World Meditation Day, and there is an initiative to create World Oneness Day, and that there are actually aspects that are of spirit that have come into the United Nations. And I think that shows us the pathway that is happening, because I see that United Nations as the heart of the wholeness of the world. And it's incredible to watch that sense of honoring something so much larger than human beings come into the mindset of the United Nations, because it infiltrates into everything. And we suddenly recognize that, yes, we're human beings, but we're spiritual beings having a human experience, which we've heard again and again. But I see the truth happening in it now, even amidst the chaos and and all that we see as darkness in the world right now. It truly is that destructive force that is, I believe, going to create the space for the new civilization, for the new humanity, for the true spiritual beings that we are, to come forward. And there is unity in that, because that is not exclusive, it is inclusive of all.
May I speak to the second question? What is the thought life, quality, and or appearance behind the blockages to right relations, and how do you dissipate them? I had to change the word, how do I dissipate them? I wanted to start off by thanking this wonderful platform of 2025 initiative that is doing so many things to bring us together. And I want to honor also Judy's reminding us tomorrow is at the UN is the UN Day of Solidarity. Because when I began thinking about this question, I thought, well, what is it that brings me down? What is it that interrupts that flow that I know can happen to us all? And of course, separativeness came to mind. And since that's not a word that I relate to very well, I thought of, well, what does that mean? And I went to fear and began with the thought of the fear that I'm not good enough. And of course I'm not. I am good, but the enough part has so much to do with the group in which I choose to give myself fully. And so as we call our names, I think that for me, I dissipate that separativeness within myself when I come to any group with an open heartedness, because every group that I participate in always carries with it a bit of that old karmic feeling about difference. And difference is real in terms of our cultures, our colors, our sexual orientations, our nationalities. But what happens when one is open-hearted is that those things are there, but they do not carry judgment or a pecking order that prioritizes. Hierarchy is a circle. Hierarchy is pure, as reflected in the Christ love. So when I think about dissipating the blockages that live within my heart, I find myself thinking less from an organizational perspective and much more from an organism. When I live in solidarity, I am one with my group brothers, and I'm identified in that open heartedness that is our destiny. It's our gift. It's what it is to be human. So thank you for the question, and let us together help one another to dissipate whatever gets in our way. Thank you. I want also just to point to sometimes the words we use. And I heard Alex calling us a family. And I know my sister Andrea has used that frequently in the vigil. So sometimes, as far as my dissipating goes, I do ask myself, am I being family? Where have I placed myself in contributing to my family's wholeness?
We're now in the energies of Sagittarian New Moon. And we know that New Moon is time when we visualize the new group of world service standing together, hand to hand, crossing distance, connecting heart to heart. And that's a beautiful and powerful gift that we received this last century, the gift of recognition of unity that transcends the boundaries. And when we meet each other, we do have a sense of family, our spiritual family of the heart. Now we stand in 2025, 100 years later, since the hierarchical conclave of 1925, when this great idea came through the meditation of the masters in the hierarchy. And now, 100 years later, we live this reality, we experience this reality. And we don't know yet. Our active minds, our brains, physical brains, cannot register yet what is the result of this 2025 hierarchical conclave. What great visions, what is the vista for the next 100 years opened up for the masters and keep opening up? Because technically the 2025 astrological year continues till Pisces in 2026, in March. And yet we all start sensing that it is this unity across borders, this recognition of each other as family, as neighbors, no matter how crazy our political leaders are and how much they want to separate us. We recognize that it's the reality. And that's where we're sending our Sagittarian arrows at this time. Yesterday, one of the meetings we had and we meditated, an image came to me that if we think about the 100-year cycles, the first 50 years is a higher interlude, and then the next 50 years is the lower interlude. And so during the last 50 years, since 1975, we entered the reality of exponentially increasing connectivity in the world that manifested in the last 25 years as internet, that in a way placed us, whole humanity, in one giant room where there's no walls, there's no borders. We can talk to each other easily. And more than that, we can hear each other. And when 8 billion people, 9 billion people start talking at the same time in the same room, that creates the sense of the chaos. And so this last 25 years, and maybe more recently in the last decade, and more specifically in the last 5 years after COVID, when we all been placed in these small cubicles of our Zoom windows, we recognize that we need to learn to somehow to organize this chaos. Maybe organize is not the right word, but this chaos needs to come into some kind of harmony. And it's probably that's where this next 100 years, what will be happening, we will be learning to harmonize the chaos of different voices. And chaos is not like evil, but chaos as just as a multiplicity of this 8 billion people voices. And that's where I think the role of the new group of world service will become very important, because we already have that capacity and even experience of being one family. And we can recognize the note of synthesis that is coming. It's been our experience so many times when we come in from different groups, from different meetings, from different meditations, we say that it's the same ideas that's been voiced in different circles. So we start hearing the same note of synthesis, the same note of harmony, and that's where our real work begins. When we need to resound that note of synthesis, when we need to broadcast that note of harmony into this apparent chaos around us, and slowly, step by step, and maybe who knows, maybe not that slowly, this dominating note of harmony will start prevailing in this cacophony of 8 billion voices. So it is our role as trained observers to learn to sound the note of harmony that we hear through our intuition, through our meditation, and rebroadcast it outward to humanity that struggles in this chaos, that struggles in this cacophony. So our role, and that's where our Sagittarius arrow can go, is on resounding that note of harmony into the world, directing it and distributing it.
I'd just like to add to the rich impressions and comments that everybody has been making, and that's what came to me, especially while Alexander was just speaking, is that he was talking about the 100-year cycles. And it seems like up until now, these 100-year cycles have been primarily orientated to directing humanity's arrows to the physical plane. That's where the masses are focused. That's where we have been focused. And with this new era, this new age, millennium, century, it's really interesting because the arrow now seems to be directed already to things that are non-tangible, more spiritual. I think we're going, again, things always cycle and go back, but I think at one point in time, the things that were most valued back in the old days, whatever you want to call them, long time ago, were morals and character in an individual. And I think now we're looking at higher aspects of not just individual, but groups or brotherhood, as we're a brotherhood. So looking beyond the physical and into that next realm that we're moving into, because we've hit the nadir of of the dense physical world, and we're on our way up now into that etheric and, etheric type of thing, which of course will probably take a long time. But I guess my point is, up until now, this has been a huge change for this century and millennium, is looking beyond the actual physical and into the sublime. So thank you.
I just want to sort of build a little bit onto what Alexander said about the importance of being those who spread harmony. I had the great opportunity to truly, truly be one house away from a neighbor growing up, and his name's Fred Rogers. And I knew him very well. As a child, I played with his children. And so he, for me, has always been that shining star because he was the epitome of harmony. And I'll never forget hearing, and it sticks deep in my heart. He was often asked, what really makes one successful in the world? And his comment was that there are actually three ways to be ultimately very successful. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. And it is that kindness, the tiny bits of kindness that we each individually can put into the world that make a difference, even though they may seem inconsequential, because it is just one teeny tiny person amidst the vastness of the cosmos. But we're reminded by Master DK that it isn't about quantity, it's about quality. And so that harmony will come through kindness.
Tell us, Andrea, who Fred Rogers was and what his focus was.
Fred Rogers was an extraordinary human being. He was an Episcopal minister originally, and he lived in Pittsburgh, and he created a children's show that was very popular in the, I want to say, 60s, 70s. He started actually in the 50s. And again, it was a simple message that came through each of his performances, his shows, that was just, won't you be my neighbor? And that we are all neighbors, and that we owe it to each other to be kind, and that the world will be harmonious if we see each other as being a part of one neighborhood.
Andrea, what an amazingly joyful thought that you were the neighbor of Fred Rogers all those years on public television and all the many young children he influenced over all of those years. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I'd like to follow up on Tracy's thoughts about moving to the sublime or the subjective. I was reading some of the material from TPS, the planetary server, and there was a quote from one of the Agni Yoga books. And at this point, I'm not really sure which one it is, although I could find the quote. But it was the idea that as thoughts come down and they come down in a spiral, they are substantial. And the idea of filling space with the substance, which is thought, and what we're doing today, and the idea of just putting forth those truths about harmony and kindness, all of those things are substantial. And we are filling space. And the other piece that I read in the material of TPS was the idea that we are writing a page in the book of life. And that hit me in a way that talking about being a co-creator never quite did, because I really got it. I got it at the level of meaning that what we do is really writing a page in the book of life, and that we can make a difference. We as a collective can make a difference. And as we touch hearts, that collective becomes bigger and bigger. So I think the work of writing that page in the book of life and knowing that our thoughts are substantial and they're filling space is something that as a group we need to not just give lip service to, but give our heart mind to, because it is reality.
That's a good point, Judy, because what came to me was, they say that uh, um, the future feeds off of what is put into that energy field. And if we're putting positive thoughts into the mental body of humanity, that is going to be feeding the future generations, as they come in, because we all share that, we have our own mental body, but we share that body, mental body of humanity also. Um, and as we all know, energy follows thought. So the more, I want to say, positive thoughts, because the whole point is it shouldn't be more positive, more negative, but things have to balance, everything balances out. There's been so much negativity, obviously, throughout the centuries, and that this positive energy that is being placed in the mental body of humanity right now and in the heart chakra of humanity, because it's coming from the heart to the higher, is what's going to feed our future generations. So this is, I think, just the kind of the basic beginnings of these works through this quote unquote group work for not just our group, but all those that are working for the higher good of humanity. Thank you for bringing that up.
There is a story that I came across this morning, a story from the early 13th century. It's a historical fact about the so-called Children's Crusade. You might know that there were several crusades when where armies were marching from Europe to the east, either to Constantinople or to Jerusalem to liberate the sacred lands. But there also was so-called Children's Crusade when two kids separately from each other, like in Germany and France, got inspired to go to organize a so-called Children's Crusade, a march to go to Jerusalem, where they could liberate Jerusalem, with the idea that Muslims not gonna kill kids, they're not gonna do anything bad to them, and they will just withdraw and become good Christians, as those kids were. And so they marched through Germany and France and came to Venice. And there they were greeted by Venetian merchants and said, "What a wonderful idea. Of course, we will help you to sail to Jerusalem." At least that's how the story goes. But they didn't sail to Jerusalem. Those ships sailed to slave markets to Tunis, to Tunisia. I got very, like, when I never heard this story before. I knew about Children's Crusade, but I didn't know the details. It's really struck me and stuck with me. It stays with me all day today, that this great inspiration of pure children's hearts end up with that such a terrible reality. And so I'm thinking, what is this in this story for us? And it's, I recognize that it's important that as much as we have these high inspirations, this really idealistic vision of the future, to be as much as possible to be close to the reality. And as we direct our Sagittarian arrows at this time, at the beginning of the new 100-year cycle, to know that the reality in the world is very harsh, and that's in order to those high recognitions and ideals of synthesis and brotherhood and harmony to land well on the ground, we need to take into our consideration the whole complexity of those murky corners of human soul and act in full recognition of that complexity and direct our thoughts in full understanding that there's a lot of hard, really hard work ahead.
I think it helps with compassion and developing compassion to remember that everyone, at whatever level we find ourselves, is here to learn on this earth.
I think your point, Alexander, is well taken because we can have those ideals, and those ideals are important to hold. But at the same time, I think we have to look at the context in which we live and how to, at the same time, act as a spiritual warrior. So I recently saw um, the head of Germany, I believe it's Stammer, saying that the people in Germany after World War II, they really did not, want to go back into the idea of war again. And so they have a very small military. They have not put monies into arms. And all of a sudden, they look at the United States as withdrawing and understanding that in some ways, they have to rely on themselves. And we're still in a reality where one has to defend oneself. And so they're training their military, they're putting money into arms. It's a sad thought that they had to look at that and understand that given the reality, they needed to be able to stand together jointly to be able to defend themselves if they needed to, because Europe now needs to be looking at itself as more self-reliant. So the reality that we live in sometimes calls for us to understand that in order to get to that place of more harmony, maybe we have to stand as spiritual warriors and understand that the environment itself is such that we can hold high ideals, but we need to be ready to deal with circumstances on a variety of levels. And certainly in holding the United Nations and looking at some of the things that are happening, we can't stand as naive. But we also need to see the light behind things. So it's that double-edged sword of understanding that some souls are still in the throes of progressing, and they're at a level that doesn't hold the kindness and the same thoughts that we have. And to be able to hold that higher note and yet stand in practicalness is the challenge that we live in at this time. So thank you.
I would like to add to this conversation as well, because I know some of us are identified as weavers in the light. And how can we weave if we do not see the actuality of the terms in which we live? And it brings to mind for me one of the lead ambassadors, and actually he was a press secretary for a secretary general, wrote a very important book on pragmatism. And that my understanding from that, when we're dealing with the situations on the ground, where often it's the choice between the lesser of evils in the moment, it brings to mind the depth of intentionality that each of us has been trained to give much attention and care to. And it reminds me that sometimes as weavers, when we learn to set our egos aside, we actually set maybe some important activism aside. And so as we learned, so the double-edged sword from maybe a psychic perspective is that setting ourselves aside doesn't mean that we set ourselves apart from the world. And my conviction is part of that turnaround will happen when the idealistic flower children step up ahead. That advisors will come in and support them and help them find the way that will not disempower them, but will lend the wisdom that often children don't have. And in many ways, we are all children. So, in terms of how do we turn these things around, just imagine with purity of intention, again, if we gave ourselves to whatever was under our noses, whether it's personal or neighborly or regional, we would give ourselves to being more leaderful in our determination to spread influence that begins by listening to how the other speaks and speaking to them in the language that they can understand. It also means that we are not needing to win. Even the story of the Children's Crusade is indeed a sad one, but the sadness is not about the children. This sadness was, why were there no advisors? Why were there no helpers to carry them through, to bring them into something that might be more doable? So we're weaving the ideal with the way the world is when we reach out to it and recognize that our meditative activism also demands contribution of some kind that's under our noses, and that the the mind itself draws much power from what was said earlier about learning to how energy itself works and how we actually can intensify that energy. So there is a president in the United States who used the motto, "Yes, we can." And it's a good one if we don't go to outcome. But if yes, we can be present to what is, and yes, we can contribute through the groups that register that identification we have in our hearts. And we are the ones we've been waiting for. So ever weaving in this fourth dimension that we live in, the fourth kingdom of humanity itself, we are not well served when we jump too far ahead of where it is we actually live. Thank you.
Loud and clear, the mantra comes through of, and together we tread this way, the ways of men, know the ways of God, and thus we stand.
Are there any more comments before we go into meditation? So let us prepare then for meditation. So over to you, Judy.
I believe that Andrea will be leading the meditation. Thank you.
Yes. Common good family that we are. We come together in the energy of the Sagittarian New Moon, knowing that we are gathering upon an ever-strengthening foundation of purpose and fulfillment. Within this space, we converge with gratefulness and joy to stimulate the collective consciousness of humanity with contemplative inspiration and thought forms of solution. We become a beacon of magnetic light for the good of all. And this intention brings forth the beautiful vision of the glowing chalice, which has been fed and filled from our work together under the Sagittarius moonlight. The glow of the chalice mirrors the light of our group soul as we stand as an ashramic outpost, directing our group will and vision towards the evolution of the soul of humanity, and consequently the upward movement of every one of God's creations. We are intuitively creating the crucial foundation of right relationship as we seek to uplift the whole within the aspiring light of Sagittarius. So let us begin by settling into a tranquil stillness and bringing our collective attention to our breath. Rest in the loving softness that we have created in this group. We have become an exemplary family that reflects the relationship that we seek to invoke into the hearts and minds of humanity. We are one heart in service to the whole, and rhythmically come together as a sacred Sagittarian fire of Christed intention. We hear the light, and we see the harmonic sound of our notes as they weave together and create a brilliant stitch in the Shambhalic tapestry that enfolds us all. With patience, aspiration, and trust, we see the goal of common good and its achievement through collective action and a shared understanding that society is better when everyone's well-being is considered. We see this as an intuitive spark whose glow is expanding in time and space and will, ultimately, ignite into a raging fire that will consume the earth with harmonic coherence and bring the peace of the new civilization to fruition. Here in the northern United States, daylight is increasingly limited as we approach the still point of the year, and the winter winds and gales of snow have returned. Even as the sun shines briefly, it is bright, but the chilly air makes our physical bodies clench and brace as we experience the absence of the sun's warmth. But there is also extraordinary beauty and inspiration in this cold, clear light. Let us imagine this group of disciples in synthesis with the one planetary server, anchored within this cold, clear light. And let us foster this meditation with the corresponding awareness of the Tibetans' definition of the cold, clear light as being the light of pure reason, that profound, radiant clarity of the soul as it reflects divine purpose through understanding. An intuitive light belonging to the Buddhic plane, that realm where pure reason and pure love are one and the same. For it is this revelation that discloses the underlying synthesis of all things, the true meaning behind appearances, and the unity that is the coalescence of all diversity. In this cold, clear light, duality dissolves, and distinctions between subject and object, self and other, expand into a single luminous whole. A decentralized consciousness that we bring into this moment as we invoke the will of God that flows with exalted potency through the will to good and calls forth to the devas that join this serving group, our co-creating partners that sense our devotion and our rhythmic, loving intention to manifest an age of reason for all. As we stand together in this cold, clear light, let us also invite the almighty Son of Sirius and her heat to awaken us and all of our brothers and sisters of humanity to receive the warmth of causal awareness and bless us with the cognizance which will bring us the power to express the enthusiasm of love and self-sacrifice, kindness and compassion in our every group thought, spoken word, and action. We are doing our part together as we direct with vision and will our beam of light, which carries the seeds of our creative imaginations intended to uplift the whole. We see the goal as we gather together under the sky of the new moon of Sagittarius, an invisible moon whose reflected illumination received from the Almighty Sun is now shielded by the earth, creating a darkness in which we see with awestruck clarity the infinite magnificence of heaven above. Millions of stars, millions of suns, galaxies, and on this day, a herald from the deep interstellar silence called Three-Eye Atlas, all appearing as tiny pinpricks of light splashed across the velvety blackness of the night. And from within this shadowed stillness, we stand as archers, steadfast, in calm and poised intent, with a quiver of arrows forged in the quiet furnace of our group heart. We fix our concentrated eye on the target with aligned consciousness, directing will and vision as trained observers, and send forth with impeccable aim our intuitive seeds into the infinite cosmos. An abundance of ideas, ideals, and wishful prayers from our heartfelt thoughts and words gathered throughout the days of Sagittarius and aimed toward the fertile garden of humanity and God's kingdom. Let us become these arrows that reflect all that we have shared together during this beautiful cycle to uplift the whole and soar into the Sagittarian silence.
We hold that silence to consider the seeds that we will release when we're ready.
We also honor those who choose not to speak, but who silently offer their formulated seeds into the field of consciousness. After each vocalized offering, we will allow each seed to rest in silence before the next one is offered. Let us now begin.
May our hearts shoot the arrow, penetrate into every human being, their infinite worth and dignity and power to unify, to harmonize, to heal.
Divine power of love now directs the arrow of humanity beyond the physical into the infinite possibilities of soul consciousness.
Let us always remember to be kind.
Aligning with the Deva of humanity, we direct our arrow so that each in turn may say, I am your neighbor.
Being in this world, but not of it. Drawing higher energies and anchoring them for others to share.
Freedom for the humanity.
We direct, we pierce the darkness with the arrows of will, love, and light, resounding the note of harmony. in the densest layers of matter.
Love to all beings, north, south, east, and west, above, below, without, within. Love, love, love to all beings.
The magnificence of love.
We focus on the purpose of our work today and the seeds collected, allowing them to vibrate and resonate within the embracing light of our group vessel. We magnetize it now with the light of Sagittarius as we invoke the will to good to differentiate our group intention. We lift high our chalice, offering it to the hierarchy as our group service on behalf of the one divine plan. We now turn toward humanity and offer our service and loving support to the collective evolution of humankind. Let us close our work as we identify with the soul in all and apply our efforts to be in accordance with divine will. We now gracefully launch the enlightened arrows of our efforts, our thoughts, our love, and the aspiring energy of our group work to help our earth in all its diversity and ultimate unity through its transformational journey into the sacred. We do this through focused direction of energy from our group ajna, sending the light out to higher beings, to other spiritual groups, to the soul of humanity, and to all sentient beings as we assist the forces of light. We seal and complete our work together by sounding the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. And from the center, which we call humanity, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh.